The school bus rumbled down the long suburban road under the soft glow of the morning sun, but the silence inside was broken by cruel laughter. At the back of the bus, 3 boys leaned across the aisle, their shadows stretching over the seat where a new girl sat frozen, her backpack clutched to her chest as if it were her only shield. Her name was Marissa, and it was her very first day at Maplewood High. She had prayed the day would begin quietly, that she could slip into a new routine without anyone noticing her. Instead, fate had handed her something far harsher. The 3 boys, Tyson, Blake, and Jared, were notorious troublemakers, the kind who turned weakness into sport. And today, their target had been chosen the moment she climbed the bus steps with nervous eyes and trembling hands. If you believe that kindness, courage, and second chances can still change lives, then take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Fearless Grace. Together, we can remind the world that compassion is never wasted. Marissa had grown up in a small coastal town before her mother's job forced them to move inland. Everything about this new life felt foreign. The streets, the houses, even the voices of the kids her age. She had always been shy, but now shyness felt like a curse. She wanted so badly to blend in, yet the louder she wished to disappear, the more the boys at the back seemed determined to make her visible. "Hey, new girl," Tyson sneered, his sharp eyes glinting as the others laughed behind him. "Where'd you get that backpack? Looks like it came out of a trash can." Marissa pressed the straps tighter in her arms, wishing she could vanish. Blake reached over and tugged at her sleeve, forcing her to yank her arm back. Jared added fuel to their cruelty with mocking whispers, leaning close enough to make her skin crawl. Their words weren't just insults, they were daggers meant to draw out her fear. But Marissa had already been through storms that these boys could never imagine. Only months earlier, she had lost her father to a sudden illness. He had been her rock, her safe place, the one who reminded her that she was stronger than she realized. Every morning before school in her old town, he would tell her, "You don't need the world to like you, Marissa. You just need the courage to stand where you are." His voice still lived in her memory, but the sound was fading with each cruel laugh. Alone on the bus, surrounded by strangers, she wondered if she could ever stand tall again. The rest of the bus was filled with students who saw what was happening but chose silence. Some looked out the window, pretending not to notice. Others smirked nervously, relieved it wasn't them. The driver, focused on the road, remained oblivious to the growing tension. It was in that suffocating quiet that Marissa realized something painful sometimes. The cruelest thing isn't laughter, it's the silence of those who could help but don't. As the bus rolled around a bend, the boys grew bolder. Tyson knocked her books to the floor. Blake muttered something ugly under his breath. Jared shoved the corner of her bag just to watch her scramble. Marissa bent down quickly to gather her things, her cheeks burning with shame, her throat tight with the tears she fought so hard to hold back. It was then, at her lowest point, that a voice spoke up from 2 seats away. A calm but steady voice that cut through the cruelty like sunlight through dark clouds. "Leave her alone." Every head turned. The voice belonged to a boy most people on the bus barely noticed. His name was Adrian. He was quiet, lanky, with dark hair that often fell into his eyes. For months, he had sat alone, sketching in a worn notebook, never joining the chatter around him. Nobody paid him much attention, which was exactly how he liked it. But today, watching Marissa shrink under the weight of the boys' taunts, something inside him stirred. It was a fire he thought he had buried years ago, when standing up had once cost him dearly. Tyson smirked, half amused. "And what are you going to do about it, Adrian? Go back to your little doodles." The other boys snickered. Most assumed Adrian would wilt under the pressure, just another soft-spoken kid pretending to be brave. But instead Adrian stood. His tall frame rose above the seatbacks, his eyes steady, his jaw set with quiet strength. He didn't raise his fists or shout. He simply walked over, picked up Marissa's scattered books, and placed them gently back into her arms. "She didn't do anything to you," he said, his voice low but unshaken. "So why don't you pick on someone else?" For a moment, the bus felt like it had stopped moving. The air was heavy with anticipation. Tyson's smirk faltered. He was used to easy victories, to people bowing their heads or laughing along. But Adrian wasn't laughing, and he wasn't backing down. Marissa's heart pounded as she looked at him. She had never seen anyone stand like that, without anger, without mockery, just unwavering courage. The boys tried to push back, Tyson stepped forward, towering inches from Adrian, his shoulders tense. Blake muttered that Adrian was just asking for trouble. Jared egged them on, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The other kids on the bus whispered, watching the standoff unfold. And then, something unexpected happened. Tyson shoved Adrian hard against the seat, expecting him to crumble. But Adrian didn't flinch. He stood straight, looked Tyson directly in the eye, and said with a calmness that silenced even the laughter, "I've seen worse than you. You don't scare me." The words hit harder than any fist could. For the first time, the boys hesitated. Behind Adrian's voice was a truth none of them understood yet, that life had already tested him in ways their cruelty never could. Adrian's father had walked out when he was only 8, leaving behind a family that barely managed to hold itself together. He had watched his mother work 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, and he had grown up protecting a younger sister who relied on him more than anyone knew. Adrian knew hardship, knew loneliness, knew what it felt like to fight battles nobody else could see. Bullies were nothing compared to that. The bus grew still. Tyson muttered something under his breath but stepped back. Blake and Jared followed uneasy now, their cruelty unraveling without the confidence of their leader. For the first time, their laughter was gone, replaced by a heavy silence that said more than any insult. Marissa clutched her books, her chest tight with gratitude and disbelief. No one had ever stood up for her like that. The bus driver finally glanced in the mirror, catching sight of the tense scene. But before he could intervene, the danger had already passed. Adrian returned to his seat as quiet as he had been before, as though nothing extraordinary had just happened. But for Marissa, it had meant everything. When the bus pulled up to Maplewood High, the students filed out slowly, their whispers trailing behind them. Tyson and his friends slipped away, their arrogance dimmed. Marissa stepped down the bus steps with shaky legs, but when her feet touched the pavement, she felt lighter, as if the weight of the morning had been lifted by someone else's courage. She glanced at Adrian walking ahead, his notebook tucked under his arm. For a moment, she considered saying thank you, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she promised herself she would never forget. Over the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. Marissa began to sit near Adrian on the bus, and slowly, carefully, a friendship blossomed. He shared his sketches with her, drawings of places he wished to visit one day, landscapes filled with light and freedom. She shared pieces of her past, the pain of losing her father, and the way silence sometimes felt heavier than words. Together, they found comfort in each other's presence. And though the 3 boys still roamed the halls, their power seemed smaller now. Because kindness, when it's brave, has a way of disarming cruelty. What shocked everyone most wasn't that Adrian had stood up that day, but that he kept standing, quietly and consistently, whenever he saw someone in need. Others noticed. Slowly the silence on the bus shifted. Students who once looked away began to speak up. Whispers of cruelty were met with voices of courage. And Marissa, she found herself changing too. Her father's words, about standing where she was, no longer felt like a distant memory. With Adrian by her side, she found the courage to hold her head higher, to walk into each day not as someone invisible, but as someone unafraid. If this story touched your heart, I ask you to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Fearless Grace so more stories of kindness and courage can reach the world. Together, we can remind others that one act of bravery can change everything. And before we end, I'd love to hear from you. What moment in your life taught you the true meaning of courage? Comment below. I'll be reading every word.